Alright guys, got a little present. Christmas came early. Tippmann X7 Phenom here. Got it off eBay, so I still have to run the usual check to see whether it's functional and things like that. So I'll do that after I unbox this. But the eBay auction said that this was a brand new marker, and I got it at a fantastic deal. This is the electronic version of the Phenom. So let's find out if everything is included. Got the manual. Weird, this manual says mechanical instead of electronic. Not too much of an issue, it's only a manual. I'm not too interested in manuals anyways, because you can get those offline. It's not a big issue. First thing I want to check to make sure this is the electro-pneumatic version is I want to see whether there's a regulator, which it does have. It's right here. This is definitely new. It seems unused at all, and it does have the e-grip, which means it is the electronic version of it. So this is the pneumatic electronic version of the marker, which is exactly what I won on the auction. So I'm going to take all this stuff out, with a barrel, foregrip, hopper, and barrel sleeve. We'll probably never have that use that box ever again. Now this barrel sleeve is pretty ugly. Can't imagine why they made it this wide, considering this barrel actually sticks out. It's not like it's wider than any other barrel out there. Anyways, so this is essentially what you would get in a brand new kit, and this is brand new, which is fantastic. The box was a little beat up, which is fine. I don't really care for boxes. What I do eventually intend to do with this Phenom is to put the Tactical kit on it, so that I can use a mag feed system. But for now, I will use this because I'm not exactly rich and I can't exactly buy everything I want at once. Great little push pin design. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 push pins. Not bad. Just like the A5. That's a complete gun without the hopper put together. What I want to do is compare the size of this to an A5, which I do have on hand. So now I have both the A5 and the X7 next to each other. Wanted to compare the sizes, put them frame to frame. The foregrip actually ends here, right where the cyclone is. So if you put it back to back, it's really the same length. The cool thing is, this is the one Tippmann product that I actually really like. This is safe. This is manual, semi-automatic, and this is electronic, either semi-automatic, 3-round burst, or full auto. So that's programmable based on the board. So once I read the manual and figure out the board, which I can't with this one, I have to actually look up the manual because this is the mechanical manual. Regardless, I'm going to figure out how to program the board. Set it to semi-automatic on electric because there's really no reason to set it on full auto. Now, Tippmann boasts that this marker can shoot 20 BPS based on the feed rate of the Cyclone. That's pretty much the fastest it can shoot. Now, that's not necessarily true with the spool valve design. It's just the fact is you can't shoot faster than your hopper can feed, which this feeds only at 20 BPS. Not that you really need anything over 15 BPS. So, this is where we, as I said, this is the regulator. This is where we adjust the velocity. This is the mag release. One of the few upgrades that I probably would highly recommend right off the bat is an on-off ASA. A lot of Tippmann users don't put on-off ASAs because they don't feel like upgrading their marker, but an on-off ASA can easily be moved from one marker to another, and it will make your life a lot less of a living hell when you go play on the field. Other than that, I'm pretty sure the stock barrel is just as good as any. It's a 9.5-inch barrel, which isn't too bad. And I don't see any other thing that would be wrong with this thing stock. Now I'm going to run a test to see if this works. Maybe shoot some video on that, but probably not. I'll probably shoot video with me putting about a pod through this while doing an efficiency test with a 13 cubic inch tank. We are going to take this apart and perform some maintenance on it. As I mentioned earlier in the unboxing video, this required a on-off, which I placed here. There's something to note that this on-off doesn't actually replace the ASA, but screws into it. The reason for getting something like this is because there are no aftermarket ASAs with an on-off for the X7. So what we're going to do is first we're going to remove all the push pins and the barrel and start to disassemble this and put some grease into the bolt. This push pin's a little harder to get to. It's actually behind a cyclone lever, so might take a little more force. But all in all, it's only 5 push pins, which you can take out relatively easily. From the looks of it, oh no, there are 3 longer push pins and 2 shorter push pins. 2 go on the frame and 1 goes on the bottom portion of the shroud. So we're going to remove the shroud. Try not to damage anything in the meantime. We're going to remove the fake mag, which contains the tools for your X7 if you got it new. It might be missing if you got it used. You open this by splitting it in half. They give you some Dow 33, an O-ring, and 2 Allen keys, which you probably will need. So now that we have that taken apart, what you want to do is separate the receiver from the trigger frame. And that's what it looks like. What you want to know is this is where your air goes into your receiver. From the ASA up to the grip into this, there's a hole on the side and an O-ring there, so that's where it seals. So when we're putting this back together, we have to make sure that's greased. Set this aside as we don't need it right now. Back end fell off. Set that aside. And you notice there's no spring because this is a spool valve marker. If you don't know anything about spool valve markers, spool valves are air-assisted bolt movement so that there is no spring or spring guide in the back like other Tippmanns, which is good because it reduces the amount of moving parts in the marker. All the screws in the receiver are exactly the same size, with the exception of the one that holds the rear sight. That one's actually longer. So we'll put it next to each other. So what we're going to do, like most electro-pneumatic markers, the bolt actually comes out from the back. The one thing you have to keep in mind with the Tippmann X7 is it has a bolt pin, which is located right here. You might need to wedge it out a little bit. It is kind of tight. So once you get it out a little bit, you can actually pull it out. If not, then just continue using a small screwdriver or whatever and just inch it up and get it out. It does eventually give, as you can see, it comes right out. And you'll notice that the cyclone releases if you're holding it on the end, right there. and that comes out right there, which is very convenient. So now the bolt can actually slide back very easily. Want to make sure you take this out slowly, and you can actually look through the entire receiver. Unlike old Tippmann's, there's a power tube in there that blocks vision that goes through the receiver. So this is done. You can actually probably run this through running water without worrying about any type of electronics, which is great. Now this is the spool valve. It's got a spring. I always hated springs on spools, but some people like them. 4-bolt, a washer, not an O-ring, a washer, and this is the regulator. This entire piece is the regulator. The air comes in through here, velocity adjustment here, and it just pushes the air forward here to the front bolt over here. Everything is confined within this singular cylinder, which is very interesting. It's a very nice design. You would clean this, put some Dow 33 on it, reassemble it, and you're done. How you clean it is you use running water, running soapy water, and wipe it down. Make sure it's really dry. You want to make sure that this is extremely dry. And if you're having any troubles with this particular gun, you want to check the O-rings on your bolt. If you're having a leak through the barrel, you want to check this O-ring. This is the main O-ring. This looks to be a cushion more than a sealer, but it's probably a bolt bumper, which spool valves do have. On a later video, I will probably take this apart as soon as I figure out how to. This looks to be a complete regulator assembly, and regulator disassembly is usually not necessary even in speedball guns unless you're experiencing inconsistency. So if your gun is shooting very consistent, you can leave this piece alone. Make sure it's just clean. Wipe it down with a wet towel and make sure it's dry. What you want to do after you rinse this through running water, you want to maybe put a barrel swab through it or paper towel. Just by eyeballing this, since this is brand new, it looks relatively clean. I'm not going to clean it. And we're going to probably chrono it to see what's shooting at. But we're going to put it together first. Alright, reassembly. Washer. Remember to put the washer back on. Everything that you took off has to go back in if you finish the job. If you finish the job and you got extra parts, you got a problem. So I'm going to put some Dow 33 on it, only because, as I've mentioned in other videos with spool valves, it never really hurts to put more lubricant onto your gun. Some people say that you can clog solenoids and things like that, but you know what? A lot of those things are cleanable. So to clean a solenoid is a lot less hassle than not being able to play on the field. Everybody agrees with that. Nobody wants to spend a whole afternoon teching their gun and it being such a stupid issue as not having enough grease on their bolts. So you want to grease this bolt. You want to grease the entire bolt. You don't want to just grease the O-rings. And because this is Dow 33, it goes on very nice. Goes on very easily. You want to make sure you get it on the side where the washer is, and as much in the inside as possible. You want to get as much in the inner bolt as possible, as this slides in this portion over here. And once that's done, you want to reassemble it here, and the spring guide. So the one reason I don't like springs in spool valves is they're not necessarily necessary, depending on the design, and they introduce a new moving part in the chamber. They introduce a new moving part in the receiver, and what this can do is it can actually scratch the O-ring over here, which can destroy your performance. Regardless, we're going to stick this back in, reassemble it, and know this thing. Now that the bolt and all the reg parts are in, you want to put this in. You want to make sure you put in the cyclone connection first, which just snaps right in. You want to push the bolt forward, and you're going to feel the spring tension. So you're going to want to push the bolt forward. Make sure you grease this up. This already has grease on it, so I'm not going to put any on. You want to push the bolt forward with your finger slightly. You'll notice the holes align, and you want to make sure you put it in a hole that you can't see through. That's where the bolt pin goes. Okay? So that's done. Your bolt is now set in your receiver. Everything else is the outer portions of the gun. So I want to mention a few things with how this functions. We're going to take this piece apart relatively soon. Okay, so on safe mode you can't pull the trigger. On mechanical mode, you'll notice that there's a little bit more tension on the trigger when you pull it. In the manual it says that the mechanical semi is the same as the electro semi. That's not necessarily true. It gives you the same function, but not necessarily the same efficiency, because when you put it in mechanical mode, you're pushing directly on the valve pin, which is located right in front of this piece right here, which I'll show you in a sec. Now when you put it in electro, the valve pin isn't triggered by the trigger pull, whereas the trigger pull activates the board, which pushes on this back piece over here on the solenoid, and that is what controls the opening and closing of your solenoid, which can help with efficiency. Now, if you want to tune your gun, you would want to tune it when you're in electrical mode, because tuning it in semi mode won't give you any benefits. The only way to tune your gun in mechanical mode is just to adjust the regulator. The dwell will not affect that, as dwell is an electronic setting set by the board to open the solenoid. So we're going to take this apart very easily. You want to move this up, pull it out, and you can just remove the trigger like that. Now, as I was saying, when you push the trigger in mechanical mode, there's a pin right in front of the solenoid right there, and that's what opens the valve so that you can fire without batteries. Whereas when you're in electronic mode, it's controlled by the back piece right here, right there. Okay, that's very interesting to note, you know. So now we're going to put this back together and stick it back on the gun. This piece, to put it back together, face it up and turn it down. Now you're on safe mode. Let's stick the back cap back in. You want to make sure you put the receiver in. Longer ones on the bottom, shorter ones on top. Good way to remember this. This will eventually get easier as you do this more often, as the give on these will be much better. So you're not gonna be able to put this on until you get the shroud on. So you can put all the ones in the back in first. Now you're gonna want to put in all these Allen screws. Remember, all the small ones go on the receiver, and the longer one goes along with the sight, which you don't even have to put back on. You notice that we didn't have to take this off to clean it, because we didn't have to split it open.
I think the next iteration disassembly and valve.
Yeah, that's gonna be hard. Your marker is reassembled. Want to put my on-off back on? This really helps.
What brand is that?
If you're looking to get this on-off, it's from Trinity. You can get it at any paintball store. They're pretty common. Doesn't cost too much, probably anywhere between $15 and $20 depending on the store you buy it from. So that goes there. Smaller push pins on top, longer push pins on the bottom. Very easy to remember. And like anything Tippmann, they always try to make things hard, even with push pins. Want to reorganize your crappy toolkit? The O-ring. Now you want to not leave this in there because if you ever open this in a field, this drops out. Now you're one less useful O-ring out. So keep that aside, keep that aside. I'm just going to keep the Allen keys in there. I'm never a big fan of sights, so I'm not even going to put it back on.
Put that side around here? From your,
Of course.
Put it on. What?
Might be lying around here somewhere.
Here.
Oh yeah. Now, as nice as these awesome sights are, never a big fan of them. Taking them off. It's gonna reduce the weight by maybe a gram, because you know that's very important with something that weighs this much. So instead, with all the weight we did save, we're gonna drop my Tiberius red dot sight on it, or scope. I guess this is called a scope, right? Because if we're gonna go milsim, it's gotta be all out milsim. Doesn't that look nice? Now we need a stock, and we'll be completing our milsim look. Well, this body's not long for existence, as I will be getting a Tactical kit, and that will look much better. This magazine is just really ugly. Alright, now we're going to run the chrono video on the Phenom on semi-electric mode. Open Ninja.
Alright.
Shooting at 311, 307, 316, too high.
It's too high. Oh, I think we have the velocity adjuster.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's pretty useful.
The problem is, I don't know which way is the velocity turned down.
Oh,
plus minus.
For ease, like a...
For ease of noobs. Oh, awesome. I left the Allen key inside. Alright, so now we're going to turn down the velocity a little bit. Following the instructions on the actual gun, you turn the velocity down by pushing it up. So you want to do this, as always, in 1/4 inch or 10th increments, which is essentially one pull.
You might want to
back.
move back a little so you can actually see you guys.
Okay. So now we're going to stick everything back in, as always. Now, with spool valve guns, in order to adjust the velocity, you're going to fire a few shots off, just so that you can get the old air out and new air into the regulator so that it can adjust the pressure in the gun. Okay.
Unlike my PMR, this doesn't have anti-bolt stick.
Let's fire 3 rounds.
Okay, so...
Still shooting at 308, 306, 304. Very consistent. If you notice, unlike any Tippmann, the
The regulator makes a difference.
regulator only makes the FPS difference of something like 3 or 4 FPS. But this thing is still shooting too hot, so we're gonna have to bring it down a little bit more. Okay, so now we're gonna fire 3 shots, and then we're gonna chrono it one more time. .309, 305, 304, 300. It is getting lower, but very slowly.
Send this bitch now.
298, 296, one more time, 292, 305, 303, 293. It's not bad. I would for outdoor fields, 290 is not terrible, and the occasional spike to 300 is actually acceptable for most fields. So if 2 out of 3 rounds are at 290, most fields will accept that. So I would actually say that at this point the gun is at perfect.